And our presenter today is Brian Pappas. I think many of you know Brian as he's been a longtime volunteer and supporter of the Dispute Resolution Center. Brian has extensive professional and educational experience in conflict management and resolution. He currently serves as faculty and assistant vice president for academic affairs at Eastern, and also teaches a class at the Michigan State Law School. But I think what really spruces up his resume is that he is currently a member of our DRC board. And one of his claims to fame is that in 2008, he was #1 in volunteer hours at the DRC. So with no further ado, I will turn it over to Brian. So welcome, Brian.
Thank you. I was tied for #1 that year.
Oh, okay.
So I don't want to, that, frankly, I learned, it helped me to develop as a mediator. It was a really important part of my growth. And it's great to be with you all here today. I see so many people I've co-mediated with and worked with, and it's just so nice to see everybody again. And I'm excited to be here and excited to talk about this, because I think not many people focus on the intersection of mediation and meditation. I'm going to call it mindfulness, because otherwise there's just a one-letter difference. But what I want to do today is talk about how I came to see it this way, how I do this, how I'm a little bit different. And we're going to do a couple of exercises. I've got one short exercise for you that if you've trained with me, you've done, but it sort of is fundamental to how I do what I do. And then we'll join some breakouts again towards the end to talk about some things, because I'm going to raise some things here that you're going to have some opinions about. I hope. I think so. And I anticipate maybe talking for 20 or a little more minutes. I don't want to, we're not going to talk for too long here. So, my journey has been has been interesting. So I was first trained at the Oakland Mediation Center, and it was a very good training. Harvey was the lead trainer. I still remember him and that. I met some people there that I'm still in touch with. It was a great experience, but I am not a very good listener. And so a lot of the skills and the tools that were being taught to me, I liked them, right? Interests and questioning and BATNA. But I wasn't that confident that I could put it all together. So when I graduated from law school, and I went to, I actually moved to Chicago to be a state's attorney, and fate sort of intervened, and they'd hired more people than they should have, and so I got a call after I passed the bar exam that said, we're not going to have you report to your job because we've overhired, and it's last in, first out, but we keep a list, we hire everyone back. So I thought, okay. And I started working for a firm that went into the prisons in Chicago and Cook County and interviewed people for class action lawsuits against the city. I mean, doing pretty much exactly the opposite of what I might have been doing as a state's attorney. And I also took some more, I also started mediating. I had some connections, and probably the worst thing that I could wish on somebody is that they're able to develop paying mediation cases, but don't have the ability to actually handle them very well. It's probably the worst thing that can happen to you. And I wasn't doing anything wrong necessarily, and some of the cases settled, but I wasn't getting repeat business. They weren't coming back to me. I thought, I wonder what's going on. And I decided I needed a little bit more training. And so I was trained, I did the transformative mediation training with Baruch Bush at Hofstra. I did another training at the Chicago Center for Conflict Resolution, Chicago. That was a really good training. And at the end of that training, Chicago and Illinois are not big mediation states like Michigan is. So at that time, there wasn't a lot of opportunities for me to volunteer. And I remember very clearly, I think we had a group of 25, and they only had so many spots. It wasn't like anybody who wanted to could, but that you had to reach a certain level of sort of competence in order to be able to mediate. And I'll never forget them saying, I'm sorry, you don't have it. I thought, well, this is really kind of unfortunate. Here I want to do this. I'm excited about it, and so I got a coach. I remember that, and I started practicing. I remember bringing role plays. I remember inviting friends over for pizza, and then saying, hey, while we're here, I've got a role play. You mind to help me practice? And them looking at me like, what are you talking about here? And so then I went back again, and I said, I want to be, sort of tested again. And, they do a role play to test you. And the second time, and I actually found this letter a couple months ago. I'm never giving this letter up. It said, I'm sorry, but you're just not quite there. So I was like, wow, here I'm ready to jump. I mean, I'm ready to jump in. This is going to be what I do. So I did. I went to and did, I decided to do the transformative training with Baruch Bush. And frankly, that's what started to open up my eyes. And what I was doing is I was making settlement such a strong goal that while they were talking, I was trying to figure out what solutions. I was trying to play chess, right? I'm going, okay, well, this and this and this and this. Oh, I'm going to work it out. But I wasn't with them. And so I think the process was very unsatisfactory to them. And it was a little bit different than the facilitative model that I'd been trained in. I didn't know how to actually navigate the conversation. And so what I had to learn is that I had to take my hands off the wheel. That it wasn't my job to solve, that I didn't have any ability to make that happen, that I had to put the participants in a place where they could make decisions for themselves. And how could I actually facilitate that communication? And so I actually, so I started just volunteering everywhere. Chicago wouldn't have me, but Kankakee would. And Kankakee is, that's a drive, but I was more than happy to make it. And so I got a lot of practice there, and I decided that I wasn't going to take paying business until I really felt confident that I could serve in a different way. I also at that time decided to get my LLM from Missouri, and so I started traveling there as well, and things sort of took off. I became more introduced to mindfulness back in 2010. Our Dean of Students at Michigan State, our Assistant Dean of Students actually, was very much about how do we support students. And even today, I'm not a believer that law school needs to be scare them to death, work them to death, and then bore them to death in succession of years. And law students have very high depression rates, much higher than the national average, and it remains high after law school. They also have higher anxiety rates. They have higher suicide rates. And so we started doing programming. And one of the things that I started getting more involved in is mindfulness. I did a retreat with Thich Nhat. It was me and probably 4,000 of my closest friends. It wasn't just me and Tay, but it was a great experience. And I started to see how being present was really helpful to me, but it was also helpful to me when I was mediating. And so I started doing mindfulness sessions in our mock courtroom at Michigan State every Tuesday for about 15 minutes. And I noticed that people would open up to me more and more about, what sort of the concerns they had and what was happening. And so when I was asked to join the Mindfulness and Law Society, to be one of the founding board members, Richard Rubin, a law professor from Missouri, was sort of the champion of that group. I jumped at the chance, and then we were invited to write a series of articles for Southwestern's Law Review in Los Angeles. And this is really the only piece of writing. I have a lot of other things. If you're having trouble sleeping, you can send me a note. I can get you all kinds of stuff that can help you sleep. But this is something I'm really proud of. And so I want to talk about what is mindfulness and how am I using it, and how am I different as I do that? And then we're going to do a quick exercise. I'm going to do a mindfulness session for us of a few minutes, and then I have some things that we're going to talk about. So I think that what I did in my mediation practice is I set a strict impartiality line, and I still hold that today in my trainings. And that is, I don't believe that the mediator should be providing their own opinions. I don't believe the mediator should be making suggestions. I don't believe the mediator should be evaluating. And I don't believe the mediator should be putting pressure on people to settle. And let me explain that. I'm not saying that anybody else is wrong for doing those things, but there are repercussions to those. And I think that mindfulness is a way to be more self-aware of what we're doing and to understand the repercussions of how we act as a mediator. And so when I say, mindfulness, let me define it because I haven't yet. Mindfulness is the moment-to-moment awareness of our present experience without judging it as it unfolds. And I'm really am a huge fan. I'm still in mourning over the passing of Thich Nhat. I love his books. Pieces Every Step changed my life. And he talks about how mindfulness can happen even when you're doing the dishes, right? That if you can't be mindful doing the dishes, how can you be mindful doing something else? Because that's all we have is this present moment. And so it's a very applied form of meditation and mindfulness. And so if you think about that definition, I use it in my mediation. So moment to moment awareness of the present experience without judging it as it unfolds. That's what I'm doing when I'm mediating also. I'm present, I'm with them, and I'm trying not to judge. And there are a lot of benefits of mindfulness. It's been sort of the cure-all for productivity, for emotional intelligence, for better attention, for reducing stress, for improving learning, for decision-making. But it's about putting our minds and our bodies in the same place at the same time and being present and alive. And it also can help us to avoid implicit biases, which I know is something that you have talked about here and is important in my teaching as well. The more self-aware I am, the more I'm in touch with what I'm thinking, the greater the chances is that I'm going to recognize my biases, and I'm going to see ways in which I might be acting that are in favor of one side or the other. So I use 5 sort of mindfulness practices in my mediations. And the first is that meditation is not something, meditation rather, is not something that I'm going to do. I love it when I searched it. When I initially wrote the article, I searched mediation on Twitter, and I got all these like tweets that said, my day's not complete without a half hour of mediation. And I thought, yeah, I like that. I don't think that's what they meant. But the first step for me is you have to have a daily practice. You don't, become more in touch with the rhythm of, good things and bad things, because life's sort of a journey and we're all on that. You don't start to see the patterns and ways of our thinking by just sitting for one time. It's an ongoing practice of sort of building that muscle. And I feel the same way about mediation as well. That's why I love community mediation and practicing, because there's always something to learn. I'm never in the same mediation. I'm never even in the same role play. I use the same role plays all the time, but it's not the facts that matter. It's people's interpretations. And when you have different people, it's always different. So I feel the same way. It's an ongoing practice. So I have an ongoing mindfulness practice. I primarily practice insight meditation or vipassana, but I also have a transcendental meditation practice that I like to do as well. And I tend to do 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night. I sometimes longer. I love, nothing like a retreat to really go deep and to learn. But I have an ongoing practice. And so when I know I'm going to mediate, I like to get there early. And in these days, I like to sit at my computer early, and I like to center myself. And I like to check in. And what I do is I just focus on my breathing. I close my eyes, and I just notice, how am I feeling? Is there any discomfort that I feel? What's arising within me? And then if I'm anxious about it, and I notice that I'm anxious, I might put myself in that place within the mediation where I know I'm going to feel some stress. And everybody has a different place for this, right? So newer mediators are usually at the point where they go, all right, what's the question I'm going to ask? I don't have any question and I'm stuck. Or, it can be a lot of things. So I kind of put myself there and I imagine myself in a place of being stuck, and I just kind of breathe into it. And as I do that, I allow myself to relax. And what I found is that if that happens, it's almost like I've been there before. So I like to do that, especially with students before they do their first role plays. But also, I think a lot of mindfulness is about acceptance. And so I like to tell my students, in fact, I encourage them, right? This is a process of failure. Right, and that sounds very negative, but it's about making mistakes, right? You learn so much more from your mistakes, and you'll go into a mediation and you'll go to the left, and instead you wanted to go to the right, or something happened, and you wish you'd done something different. And so then when you go into your next mediation, you're like, I'm not making that mistake again. Well, that mistake is long gone. There's a new one that's going to come in there today, and you're not going to know it. So it's sort of being at peace with that idea that we're sort of enough as we are, and that we can do this, and that it's okay to make mistakes, because there's no perfect mediation. Anybody who tells you that in a perfect mediation, I would question that. I don't know that exists. So during the mediation, I also am using mindfulness, and the way that I do that is I can feel pressure. And when I notice I'm feeling that pressure, I just take a moment and I take a couple of deep breaths. And nobody has to notice that I'm doing this, but I just want to recenter myself. And the place where it happens for me, I like to teach a process where after the introduction, I want each side to talk about what brought them there in an uninterrupted way. And I'm going to reflect back what they say. And I want to reflect back about 80%. And so I've got to write. Right. So the times when I feel it is I start taking some notes. I want to try to maintain that eye contact, and the person's talking fast. And I think to myself, oh my gosh, how are you going to do this? You're not going to be able to reflect this back. And that moment of panic, and I just sort of go, take a deep breath. You can do it. Don't think about doing it. Just do it. And don't analyze it. The best you can is enough. And that kind of thing. And I can do that at any point during the mediation. If I feel myself getting annoyed at something, if I can just sort of go, all right, just take a second here. And I find that to be really helpful. I've done it in between a joint session. And if we happen to be using a caucus, I've used it between caucuses. I enjoy co-mediating a great deal. I would prefer to co-mediate at all times, so I can sort of talk something through with my co-mediator, take a couple deep breaths, and it helps a lot. But I also the way the article also talks about how my entire mediation in some way is a mindfulness exercise. So if the breath is the anchor of a meditation, the anchor of mindfulness, and you can use other anchors. I mentioned transcendental meditation, they use a mantra. Your bodily sensations and feelings can be an anchor. Visually, there can be anchors. I've taught mindfulness with food. Eating can be an anchor, and eating mindfully. But the most traditional one is the breathing. And so the breathing of the meditation is the reflection for me of mindfulness. And so what I want to do, and I'm actually really comfortable here, if it's okay, I'm going to recreate our breakout rooms. Gail, how many do we have here? Do we know the number?
I've got them all set up, Brian.
Oh, cool.
I promise this time
Sweet.
It'll work.
No, I just want to make it as easy as possible. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to put you in a breakout room, but not yet. I'm going to give you an exercise that this is the secret. Remember Oprah? She had the secret. I think it was what I need to read up on this. I believe it was what you put out into the world is what you're going to get back. That was Oprah's secret. That's not my secret, but but it's that kind of revelation for me. We're going to do the last word exercise. Okay. Let me tell you what that is. I'm going to put you into, well, you're going to be in a breakout with one other person. And Gail, I'm going to use you. Well, I shouldn't use Gail. Gail's busy. That's not right. If somebody wants to try this with me, I will show you what this is. So you're going to decide who's going to speak first. Okay. And the person who's going to speak first is going to say a sentence. And then the second person is going to start their sentence with the last word of the first person. Okay, this is something that Second City came and did some exercises at Michigan State, and I'm using this in a completely different way than they use it, but I like it. So let's say I said to you, I like getting up early in the morning. Well, you would then say, well, in the morning or mornings, it doesn't have to be the literal first word you use, but it's got to be the topic. Mornings for me are not good unless I've exercised, right? So then I might say, well, exercise is, if I don't exercise, first thing, then it may not happen, right? And you might say, well, what happens for me, right? And so I just want you to practice that. We're going to do it just for a minute, not very long at all. All right. So Gail, whenever you're ready.
Okay. So you want to go first?
Sure. I love that meditation gives me a sense of peace.
Peace is a wonderful thing. If only we could find how to create it wherever we go.
To go places and see things is something that I enjoy doing a lot.
A lot of people really enjoy the arrival of spring.
Spring is wonderful.
Welcome back. I hope you got a little taste. Purpose of that was, so when I do that exercise, I always ask, did anybody interrupt anybody? And the answer is always no. And they say, well, how are we going to interrupt somebody? We were waiting for the last word. And exactly. So what the last word exercise shows is what's going on for me when I'm using reflection within a mediation, right? So it's not even the reflection that matters so much. It's me being ready to reflect, right? I'm waiting for that last word. It stops me from thinking about all the things that I want to say. Because if you're like me, I'm telling you, I'm hearing you talking about something and I get excited and I want to go, oh, wait a minute, I've done this too, and this and this and this. And it stops me from actually listening well. And so it's the act of being ready to reflect. It's almost like an awareness and a readiness, knowing that I'm going to do that makes the difference. Now, I don't always reflect, right? I do when I'm teaching because I want to demonstrate. But as a mediator, I want to reflect 80% of those initial stories. But when I'm in a joint session, I'm not writing things down. I'm not trying to reflect 80%. I've got to differentiate when I do it and the depth to which I do it. If somebody says something really important, Bob's always been a great father. Well, I'm going to reflect that directly. I'm going to go that word for word, but I don't have to. It's the readiness to do it. And so when I'm stuck in a mediation, it's almost like when I say, oh, go back to the breathing. I go back to my reflection. I have a sign in my office that says, keep calm and reflect, right? What do I want to do? I can do that. I can keep calm and I can do it. And so some of the benefits to this are that I can start to see questions. I can start to see interests. I'm actually staying with them. So as I reflect, I'm going to actually ask questions about what they've said within that reflection, right? And I can just, it's a great way to help people feel heard too. And so if I think about the levels of listening, nodding is great, but that doesn't necessarily tell you that I've heard you. When I say, one of the things that you've said is this, this, and this, that they know that I heard them. But then when I say, here, I'm also hearing that this is important to you. That's identifying an interest, or that you feel very, you're very worried about this. Then I'm adding empathy. I mean, that's where people really start feeling understood. So I find it to be just an incredible tool to do it. And so during the mediation, I'm doing that. I also can use it very effectively to maintain control, because I'm a big believer that if you don't have control within a mediation, what are we really doing, right? We can't have people fighting and talking over each other. So a tool I love to use is a double reflection. So if one side says, I don't think that you really care about this, and the other person says, no, I do care, and they start going back and forth, I don't have to go, stop. I don't have to do that. I can say, so I just can, and it's a lot easier to do in person, but you can still do it online. I can say, so let me make sure I understand. You feel, and I can reflect one side and say, but you feel, and I can reflect the other side. Well, now I've got the mic back. People, and I'm developing a relationship on each side where they know that I'm in some ways amplifying, so that the other person can hear what the other person said through me. And we start to develop a relationship where they know if I jump in that I'm going to give the microphone back. And I find that to be an incredibly good tool. But also, if there is no fighting, right? If there's no disagreement, if they're not interrupting each other at all, and I go through, because I do a story segment, I do an agenda, we get to that joint session. I always joke that the first rule of Mediator Fight Club is just to let them talk, right? It doesn't have to be me talking. And so, but if they are fighting, I can reflect and have things go through me. I can have control. Someone says something, I say, let me make sure I understand. So it can be really simple. So A and B, tell me more about, and I can ask them a question, or I can ask a question to the other side. But then as we start to restore that constructive interaction, I can kind of sit back, give a beat, let them respond to one another, and see if I've restored that constructive interaction. And so when I think about mindfulness and my practice, what I'm really doing is working on the communication dynamics to expand information, to see if I can help them not like each other, because people aren't necessarily going to like each other, but to develop a relationship within the mediation, communication-wise, that enables them the self-determination to make decisions for themselves. And either they're going to move closer to each other and they're going to resolve this, or they're not. And where they don't, usually it's because they don't know what they want, or they aren't comfortable sharing. Then I am going to go to caucus, and that's a little bit more of a negotiation coaching exercise for me. But this is how I think of my mediation as a mindfulness exercise. I think it's important to be present with where people are, so this helps me to be more present with them. The control, the reflection allows me to control without being controlling. It allows me to see questions in the moment, to find those unasked, unanswered questions. It also helps me maintain the impartiality line. So, this is hard to explain sometimes, but if, I'm not saying that you have to ignore your own opinions. In fact, your own opinions are probably right? But I don't go looking for them. As a media, I'm not sitting here thinking, okay, how do I fix this? Or I sort of let it bubble up. And as it pops up into my mind, I get curious. Your mind gets curious. And then the questions get really good. And so as I have a curiosity, I have to think, okay, how can I ask this to maintain my impartiality? Because if I say, well, what about this? Why don't you do that? The other side might go, oh, that's what they keep saying. I don't agree with that. But I can ask an open-ended question and say, tell me more about this. And then as they talk about it, they'll add something there that I can say, so let me make sure I understand. It sounds like this and this. So it sounds like you're open to A, and I can ask a question that leads them right to sort of that solution that I was trying to get them to. It takes an extra question, but I find I'm maintaining their self-determination and my impartiality. And my impartiality is important to me because I want to be able to ask them tougher questions. It's not about not asking tougher questions. I don't want them to think they're negotiating with me. And so that's sort of how I think about this. And I know that sounds really strange because I went into the Kansas City Mediators Association a few months ago, and I started with, I don't believe settlement is the goal of mediation. What do you think? And of course, half the room is like, this guy is crazy. Settlement's not the goal of mediation. It's not the goal. I think it's the result. Because if everybody has to go into mediation knowing they want to settle, so many people are mandated to mediation. So many people go, they don't know they want to settle. So I say that the goal of mediation is to find out whether people want to settle and if there are possibilities for it. I don't care whether they settle. And there are plenty of, I do like it when they settle. I'm not going to lie about that. But I don't have any ability to make, to do that. I'm always amused by those mediators, right? And I'm going to give you a trigger warning. I'm going to do a little Donald Trump now. Those mediators are coming and they go, listen, I settled all the cases settled, okay? Okay, all of them. How do you don't have any control over that, right? So you should feel just as good. If you do a good job, you do a good job. And we don't know whether the case settled later because of something you did or not, right? It often does. So I think it's the result. And so how do I put people in the best position to make decisions about whether they can settle? And so this reflection sort of mindfulness centered approach enables me to be with them and to help them feel heard by me, which makes them more able to hear the other side, which also makes them more open to thinking critically about their own perspective with me when I'm in a caucus. So I wanted to share that. And then I do have one other meditation piece I do, and that is after the session. I love one of my favorite things to do when I'm co-mediating is to meet afterwards and talk about what happened. And usually I like to start with, all right, let me tell you, there are a couple of questions I asked in there that were terrible. let me tell you let me think about how I might have asked those differently. Because I'm trying to figure out how to operate, and you're always going to make mistakes. But I want to sit and just take a couple deep breaths, and because sometimes you feel a lot of emotions after a tough mediation, right? Sometimes things happen, and also these are, what a great way to serve the community. You have some folks that are going through really tough things, and often I'm afterwards I'm sitting there and I'm just I'm feeling so much empathy for what they're going through. You imagine having to experience, and what a gift it was for them to share this with us and for us to be able to help them. I find it to be really, really helpful. So what I want to do is I'm going to do a 5-minute mindfulness exercise for us. And then I want to, answer any questions that you have, but I have a list of questions that we can go into some smaller groups and talk about, and then talk about all together. So if you'll indulge me, you feel free, you can participate or not, it's totally up to you. But what I want you to do is sit with your feet on the floor, if you can, if you're in a place where you can do that, and sitting forward a little bit so that you're not quite resting back, but you're sort of alert. You can have your hands in your lap or on the desk in front of you, whatever is comfortable. And what I want you to do is to just close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. And I want you to notice where you most feel your breathing. Is it the air moving around your nose? Is it the expansion of your chest? Is it the sound? And I don't want you to control your breathing. I just want you to notice it. And I want you to just think, breathing in, I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm breathing out. And you can shorten that to in and out. And then I want you to notice if you feel any tension in your body as you do this. And as you breathe in, notice. And as you breathe out, relax. Notice if the muscles of your face are tense and relax those. Notice if your hands are carrying any tension. Your shoulders and your neck or your back. And then as you're breathing, the victory is not clearing your mind. The victory is not staying focused just on the breathing. The true victory are the moments where you notice that your attention has wandered and you can bring it back. So as thoughts arise, and they're going to, and I'm telepathic, so some of you are going, this is painful, don't like this. That's okay, just notice. Notice that thought. I don't like this. And then notice the next thought. It's like the ESPN or CNN ticker, right? It's just crawling around across the screen. You're gonna notice it and let it go. You're fishing the river. You're gonna catch and then you're gonna release. So we're just gonna take a minute. Focus on your breathing. Watch the thoughts arise and leave. Take a deep breath. Physically smile. And slowly open your eyes. So mindfulness is it's a active form of relaxation. And the way I like to think about it is that it's like when I reset my computer. I probably don't do that enough. I probably don't restart my computer enough, but it allows me to sort of reset. And so I find that it's hard for me to focus or be productive after about 90 minutes. And so I like to sort of take a moment and breathe. I have an alarm that I can turn on my computer that will randomly do that. And I'm always amused by how frustrated I am when that alarm goes off. And I'm like, oh, right, stay focused, stay present. So I'm interested in a few things here, right? And these are questions that we can talk about together. We can, I'm interested in you going and talking about them in smaller groups. One might be settlement, right? Is that the goal or is that not the goal? Like, what is he? Is he completely, all right, I'm the first to tell you, I'm a little bit nuts, right? Whether you agree or not, it's is my impartiality line too strict, right? Don't we have to walk over that line a little bit? Isn't it context dependent? What anchors you when you're mediating, right? What are the things that you rely on that bring you back? What was this mindfulness exercise like? And could you see yourself using that to center yourself and prepare for mediation? And I also have, how can self-awareness and debrief help us to improve? Because I think that's really what mindfulness is. It's being self-aware and without judgment of what are the things that are good and not good, and holding ourselves with compassion and care, and doing that for the mediation parties as well. So I'm excited. Let me see. Are there any? I'm excited to talk to you about these things. So, yeah, and to answer Elaine's question in the chat, yes, I do tell them. What I say is that this is a process where the goal is to communicate effectively and to to see whether they want to settle this. And if they do, what are the options that might help them do that? And I say it's voluntary. There's no obligation to settle this. I also tell them that after my introduction, even if it's been mandated, they're free to go. And everyone says, oh, you can't tell them that. Well, I remember Doug Van Epps one time hearing me say that, saying, I don't know if they even have to listen to you. I sort of laughed at that, but I've never had anybody leave. And if they did, that's okay. They didn't want to be there. So, that's how I explain that. Another question that often comes up is I've never done a mindfulness exercise within a mediation. I'm not against trying that at some point. I mean, I'm always of the view that they sort of treat you like you're important or you're in charge. So if I want to hold hands and walk in a circle, they'll do that too. But I don't want to impose, that on anybody. My view is that as I center myself within a mediation, I can see them do the same. So if I take a couple of deep breaths and I slow myself down, I can sort of see, it sort of gives them permission to do the same because they're going to react to me. Those are the two burning ones that I think of. Why don't we get into some groups and discuss this a little bit, and then I'm really excited to hear what your thoughts are when you come back.
Okay, everyone, I put the questions in the chat. So when you get into the breakout groups, you should be able to see them. If you have any questions, you can message me and we'll try to help you. So I put you in groups of about four or 5 or 6 folks. So I'm going to create the rooms now and we'll see you in about 10 minutes.
So I'll just start off and say, from my training and everything Belinda has said over the years, I would have to agree that, we shouldn't, the idea isn't to push settlement as the goal. It's recognizing that any progress they make toward communicating more is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, I do say that all the time, especially in training, because I think so many people feel that pressure. I believe in the process and believe that whatever gets accomplished in a mediation is helpful to the participants. And the unknown number, especially as it relates to court cases in the state of Michigan, what we don't know is how many cases settle outside of mediation. But because of that discussion of mediation, we have but what we can infer is that a significant number do, because so few civil cases go to trial in the state. So we can infer that mediation, negotiation, settlement conferences, and other ADR techniques are getting those outcomes or solutions that people grapple with or can't get to in the beginning of their case. So I guess I stick with that position. And mindfulness is hard for me to be still. That 5 minutes was like, Lord have mercy. I turned my timer on. I'm like, only 5 minutes, and but it's hard for me. But the first exercise he did, that was really good for me, just to feel so present, even in a few seconds, to be present and to be able to pick up where a person left off. That was good for me. But I also know that the mindfulness is a healthy exercise that I have been interested in for probably 10, 12 years. And I just struggle in doing it. Once I'm on, but I need to work on that because it is overwhelming. And at our center, our cases are becoming so much more complex, and designing these services are becoming complex, and trying to be a good steward and gatekeeper of what we do is just becoming very challenging, because people locally need something that our systems have not even thought about yet. So I appreciate today's presentation. And Darren and Chris, I don't think we've ever met. I don't know if you're working with the center or not, or if you do. Claudia and Craig are volunteers. I've known them for years and years.
No, I actually volunteer at the Wayne County Dispute Resolution Center.
Oh, okay.
And also at the Oakland Mediation Center. I graduated from Wayne State in 2007 with a master's in dispute resolution.
Oh.
I had emailed you, but I'm located in Detroit and you're in Ann Arbor, so it makes it kind of difficult. But I emailed you several months ago because I really wanted to find out more about community dispute resolution, because I think, as you said just a few moments ago, there are things happening in our community, especially among people that are the most vulnerable, that the system hasn't even targeted yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real challenge at times, and even within family networks, and there's a lot going on within family networks. It's difficult because there's no roadmap.
Mm-hmm.
When we mediate, there's usually some sharing. If you co-mediate or you observe, you're always adding to your toolkit. But in a lot of these cases, sometimes you feel like it's uncharted territory, and you just have to say, I am here to facilitate and to give the parties an opportunity to just talk about what's bothering them, and hopefully in the process they will be able to come to some kind of understanding. You don't even get to agreement. It's just, can we just kind of get to an understanding where you're willing to at least listen to the other person and find out what is bothering them and what their concerns are. Mindfulness helps me. I've been meditating for about 3 years because I had to deal with my dad who had dementia, and absorbing someone's entire life and working, and I'm no spring chicken. It was overwhelming, and it happened all at once. There was no preparation. One day he was there, and the next day we knew something was wrong. So I had to find a way to help myself so that I could maintain my spirit, so that I could also be a caregiver, and also look at the person who at times might be extremely agitated and just ranting and raving, and never forget that this is a human being and they can't help where they are. And so you have to do this. And so I had to find a way to just help myself so that I didn't stroke out, because my doctor was saying your blood pressure is up, you're eating dinner at 12:30 in the morning, you're up from 6 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the morning. You got to do something, because she said, I have caregivers that pass away before their wards. So I had to really put on the brakes and help myself. And it has helped me in mediation, because it's sort of like I can put on my comfy blanket, my warm blanket. So when I get to that mediation, no matter what I'm faced with, I can just maintain that calm and be comfortable. But it was not easy, Belinda. It took me a long time.
The thing came up that we have 2 minutes, so we have a little bit less than that.
Okay.
Chris or Claudia, did you want to jump in?
So I'm brand new. I don't work with DRC. It happened to come up on an email for me. I work in juvenile probation. I'm a reintegration and family services coordinator. So
in Washtenaw County?
Berrien County.
Berrien. Oh.
Berrien County. So the little mediation I do is not on a level with like you guys do. It's more so trying to resolve any issues between maybe some of my clients, or in a home with a parent and a child, parent and a teenager, things like that. Or if a teenager has an issue at school with a teacher, that's the extent of what I really do. So it's not in depth like you guys do at all.
Well, welcome, and thank you both for being with us this afternoon.
I just wanted to say, in terms of the meditating, I've been trying to use mantras. My sister who teaches yoga had one that I thought was great, and it is, I'm doing the best I can. I am enough.
Mm. Mm.
And that when I'm doing the best I can, I am enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's helped me, and I've given it out to other people. But I think that kind of settles me, and
Mm-hmm.
you're good.
Yeah.
And in terms of meditation, just today's, I felt relaxed when he said, relax your face, relax your hands. That all that helped, and I just felt myself doing it.
Mm.
And nice to meet everyone.
Nice to
I
meet
didn't
you as
know.
well.
Darren, I'm going to put in the chat another resource in the Metro Detroit area that might interest.
I hope you had a great conversations. I'm excited to see what questions, what thoughts, what came out of your discussions that we might all discuss together. And I was so happy that Gail didn't put me in a group, because I want you to be able to go, this guy's crazy. I don't agree with any of it. That is totally. I probably would have agreed with you if you'd said it and I was in the session, but I don't want to inhibit anybody from sharing their thoughts. So what do you think? Is there any what burning questions or views might you have?
I was thinking about an early case that I had where the party started maybe $900 apart. And we moved and moved and moved. And after what seemed like so much time, we finally got down to $20 apart. And the one guy up and left. And I thought it was my fault because I didn't mediate right.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're saying today is very helpful, because now I can let go of that. He wasn't ready.
That's it. And sometimes when it doesn't, I've been in a couple, and maybe with I don't remember who I co-mediated with here, but I remember one situation in a divorce where, if I remember correctly, it was during a caucus, the husband says to the co-mediators that she's just doing this for the kids, that we're going to get remarried. This actually isn't, this is all fake. And so I remember us saying, would you be willing to share that when we get back together? And the person did, and it was almost like it put a mirror up to the other person in the situation, and we caucused and they thought about it, but the person decided, no, this really is done. And they didn't settle that, but it was like, what a success. It enabled people to get clarity. And so I'm, we don't have control over whether you do the best job in the world. It may not be in the cards for them. And this is a process. I love you sharing that example.
Brian, Audrey has a question. Audrey, you want to go ahead?
Yes, Brian, in my group, I asked if they ever used mediation. One person did give an example of using it. But I found that it was quite powerful what you stated in terms of how using mindfulness intersects with mediation. As far as mediation, I don't do mediation. I do circles, peacekeeping circles. But your statement in terms of those that you are in doing mediation with, or even peacekeeping circles, when you stated that you use mindfulness, you take some deep breaths, and it was really, it caught my attention when you said that they will kind of follow you in what you're doing when you take that deep breath, because I was trying to figure out how I'm not going to use mindfulness, because I'm used to doing it just by myself.
Mm-hmm.
my well-being, and to help me to stop analyzing everything and just to be. And so I thank you for that. But it also says to me, if you need to really know something about applying mindfulness yourself and using it, if you're going to use it in mediations or peacekeeping circles.
I agree with that. I think I'd want to be very deliberate and thoughtful. I'd want to, I wanted to mention, I'm doing a 2-year course on mindfulness instruction. It's with Jack Kornfield and Tara Brock through, it's a center at Cal Berkeley, and it's really given me a lot of insight into this. And so I might see, how might I try to use this? How would I formulate this for a mediation? But I think the same things I mentioned are just as relevant to peacekeeping circles, restorative justice, and so when I don't know how else to say this, but I feel like the more I have my own stuff together, the better I am as a mediator. And I don't know how else to describe that. It's almost, and I really firmly believe that we can, I can stop the parties in a mediation from bringing up emotional topics if I don't want them to, in my body language and how I respond. And I don't think, this, I'm going to sort of echo the, bringing peace into the room kind of idea. We have a lot more inherent control than we think we do. And so being aware of that and sort of developing our sense of comfort and peacefulness, I think, is powerful.
Craig, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, comment. A couple of the topics made me have to share a couple things I'm going to put into chat, links to 2 very short videos. One is me talking about how to meditate because in a humorous way, because so many people say it's so hard for them to meditate. And then the other one is just a short clip from a Thich Nhat Hanh talk that I was at many years ago about the power of listening. And I think it's really good, and you might enjoy the one of me. So I'll stick those in the chat.
Thanks, Craig. That is awesome. I have a couple, and I have a couple of Thich Nhat Hanh's calligraphies, because he made the calligraphies, and I loved him explaining them because he would draw a circle around what he wrote, and he talks about how he breathes in and he breathes out as he draws and they're awesome. Thanks for sharing those.
Ruth, you have a question or comment?
Yes, in our group, one of us, this sort of follows up on the comment I think that Audrey started, but one of us had been in a mediation where the mediator tried to control the emotions in the room, and she commented on how that was not real helpful, and she learned from what she felt was a mediator's failures in that regard. And the other thing that she said, Shirley, this is you. The other thing is that she felt that it had been real helpful to be on both sides, to have been in a mediation as well, particularly in order to do mediation. And I certainly agree with that.
I might ask Brian if he's had opportunities to experience the experience we have with the Zooming sessions in mediation. They're far different than the little conference rooms where you have opportunities to observe body English and you can almost smell the emotion, which you just don't get when you're sharing that in a Zoom environment.
Yeah, I have, and I think it is different. And I wish I could tell you that I thought that we're all going to just be back in person and we'll never be mediating online in the future. But I don't see us going back. I think. Oh, hold on a second. I think that I think this is going to become a little bit of a new normal for us, and I think it does make a difference. The body language matters, And I also think that the other challenge, the reason why I like using and thinking about mindfulness even more, is that there's less intentionality, right? When I have to drive myself somewhere, right, I'm thinking more carefully about what I'm wearing. I'm thinking about more carefully about how much time I need. It's a little bit different. And when you just have to get on the Zoom, it becomes just another Zoom meeting, right? And I think that way. And so I want to, I like to hold mediations in a little bit more of a special place. But also it's the same thing for the participants as well. They're moving from activity to activity, and there's not that in between. And so I try to be a little bit more deliberate in my introduction, a little bit more slow, a little slower in my introduction. I try to be a little bit, I definitely talk more about ground rules, about interruptions and what else might be going on, because I want to create, kind of a space for this to happen. And I think that's tougher. I really do. And if others have ideas about how they help people to be more present within the sessions, it'd be great to hear about it.
Brian, Muffy had a question for you. When you mediate, do you use transformative or facilitative? You mentioned you train for both. And then Shirley has a question after, when you're done with that.
It's a long answer, but I'm going to make it very short. I'm a facilitative. I use transformative listening skills to reclaim facilitative mediation, because I think there's a lot of pressure on facilitative mediation to be more settlement oriented, to be more evaluative. I think it's a natural growth of mediation sort of becoming the new vogue instead of arbitration. And I think that especially when we're talking about attorneys in a session, they're going to legalize their mediations. They're going to use the same tools to an extent. And so I understand that, but I'm using some of these techniques to sort of, I want to reshape those facilitative lines a little bit. So the transformative people will not accept me. I'm telling you, they would not, because I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm doing a lot of things that is not in keeping with the transformative theory, but I very much like the transformative theory. I ascribe to it and I teach it.
Shirley, you had a question?
Yes. Brian, I just wanted to say, as I agree with what you said about body language, and I know people are talking about we're probably going to stick with Zoom, but I hope more of us will speak up, because you can't do the real justice with the Zoom. You need to be face to face and watch body language and eyes and emotions, and if we don't get back to that, we're going to lose a lot. And so I hope that more of us, I don't know what that will do, but I know if people speak up, sometimes it'll bring about a change. And we need to do something about this Zoom, because I'm so tired of Zooms, because I want to see a real person.
And I'll tell you, I agree with that. And I think people also, it's sort of like social media. People are a little more comfortable to say whatever they want when they're not with somebody. It does change that a little bit, and it changes the relationship more than anything. It changes the relationship that I can have with them. It's just not as proximate. I can't look them in the eye. We can't have that interaction. It's tough.
It is tough.
And Michael, you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, a couple of things. Just for 1 second, I actually am a big fan of Zoom, but I'm not going to go into that. But my question is, I've been in some situations where we've started in a circle which has ended up in mediation, and I'm very confused about the relationship between circles and mediation, because I have a sense that in some ways there's quite a few differences. And I'd really like to propose, it would be great to have a session on that sometime. And I want to talk to people about that, because there are some things that kind of disturb me about it in terms of intentionality, in terms of the role of the keeper versus the mediator and things like that. So I just wanted to mention that.
Thanks, Michael. I enjoy doing both. I think of them very differently. The times I would use mediation skills in a peacekeeping situation is if there was a conflict that emerged. I would very briefly work to help people feel heard, and then remind them of the rules of the circle, and then go back to my peacekeeping role. But it's a great question. I'd love to. Let me know when you do that session. I wanna make sure that I'm free so I can learn.
All right, everyone. Well, it is about time to wrap up, unless somebody has one quick comment or question. Okay, as I mentioned, I will send out a follow-up email that will have the evaluation in it. I'll also resend Brian's article that was referenced a lot in this session. And I'll also send out Craig's links that you put in chat. I'm not really good at keeping stuff from chat, so I'll resend those again. And thank you, Alexandria, for that suggestion. And I'll also give you the schedule for the upcoming Lunch and Learns as well. So a huge thank you to Brian. We greatly appreciate your participation. It was extremely helpful. So wonderful to see all of you here, and hope everyone stays warm and well as we wrap up winter and enter into the Michigan spring season. Yay.
I want to give a shout out to some of my favorite people to co-mediate with are here that I haven't seen in a long time. So Nancy, you're one of them. And Claudia and Alex, I would love to co-mediate with you.
Okay. You're on.
Alex was a longtime department head in physics at EMU, and really we miss you, Alex.
Oh, I miss it there too. But yes, I would love to do that.
Thanks for putting up with me. 90 minutes. Whew,
Yeah.
You made it. Your Brian badge, you get it.
Yeah, I want to thank Brian, and I'm not sure, I came here a little late, so I don't know if everyone knows, but it's wonderful to have Brian as a new member of the board of directors of the DRC. So I'm not sure if that was mentioned or not, but it's great to have him.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. Everyone stay warm and well, and we'll be in touch. Have a good rest of the day.